Welcome on in. This is the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm John McKechnie. That is Mario Puig. Today we are unpacking our best ball portfolios, talking about players that we have the most of, the least of, guys we wish we had a little bit more exposure to, and maybe some guys that we wish we weren't so in on earlier on in draft season. So a lot to unpack here. Let's get it rolling. Welcome on in. This is the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. John McKechnie here, hanging out with Mario Puig. And Mario, we are a week away from the NFL season kicking off, which means best ball season is dying down, at least in the regular terms. You know, the season-long tournaments, weekly winners, things like that. So I figured this would be a good time since we only have, again, 6-7 days to finish out our best ball drafts. Be a good time to kind of take some stock and see where we're at, see who we have the most of, the least of, and some FOMO as well. So I wanted to get us started here. If you've been listening to the show at all this offseason, you know that I have a problem when it comes to drafting Chig Okonkwo. I have a ton of Chig Okonkwo. I'm going down with the ship. He is my highest exposure player. I'm just filtering this to tournaments only over on Underdog. 46% for old Chig Okonkwo over there. So starting there, what are your thoughts on him now? How much exposure do you have to Chig Okonkwo? Is this good or bad to have this much exposure?
Well, I guess it helps to kind of clarify what your goals are as a best ball player. Like, there are a lot of people, more pro type sorts, I guess you'd say, who do really big portfolios, really big buy-ins, like thousands and thousands of dollars. That's not me. I'm just not interested in it. In a way, I'm not interested in it because I would have to take it more seriously and be more responsible with my exposure rates, which I hate doing. I want to be able to act on impulse and do whatever seems fun to me at the time. So I kind of resent the place it takes me to where I have to start actually keeping track of the money that I'm putting in and like worry about the effect it might have on my finances or something. So people who are more volume conscious and very do a better job keeping track of their liabilities and everything, they tend to pursue exposure rates much less than what we end up with, John. They tend to consider something a high exposure rate, even around like 12 or 15%. Whereas we're like, I don't know if I have a player that I've picked that's under 12%. I'm so compulsive with my reasoning that I kind of just do the same thing over and over. So if I pick a player one time, I'm probably picking them at least 5 times or whatever it is. So 40% for Okonkwo is quite high, especially by the standards of these more volume drafters. But I'm okay with it for the reasons that I said before. And granted, I guess I'm, in Okonkwo's case, a little biased, a little motivated to be seeing it optimistically because I have him on 31.8% of my teams, which is also very, very high by most people's standards. However, I'm not worried about it at all. I think some of the concerns with Okonkwo are overstated. The upsides with him have been completely drowned out of the narrative, which I don't understand why we would do that when he's the kind of athlete that he is and he produced the way he did last year. Seems weird to cross him off, in my opinion. But the other thing is, it's easy to kind of, in my opinion, it's easy to not worry about Okonkwo because he never cost very much. He never. Maybe at the peak this offseason, he was going at something like the 11th, 12th round turn, maybe. But it's generally more been the 12th, 13th round all along. So that's where a lot of people are taking their second tight end, And if Okonkwo's not worth like a top 15 sort of tight end return, I'd be pretty shocked. It's a low bar. I mean, we're only like 2 years removed from that one season where Logan Thomas was like the tight end 4 with 680 yards or something like that. So
right.
Realistically, if you don't get Kelsey or Mark Andrews, in my opinion, you're kind of punting at tight end. So as much as I take plenty of Kyle Pitts and a couple other guys in between, Kelsey, Andrews, and where Okonkwo goes, I don't think anyone needs to like chase tight end points once Kelsey and Andrews are off the board. I just don't think it's realistic.
I don't think so either. So I guess, again, the framing that's important to keep with Okonkwo is more often than not, you're taking him as your second tight end. And for me, he just kind of represents the end of the road as far as bankable tight end assets, because Laporta and Kmet both come off the board right around there. And then once Okonkwo's gone, then you're talking about guys like Gerald Everett. You're taking a risk on Luke Musgrave.
Hate Everett.
Yeah, I don't like him either. Jake Ferguson, I don't think that he's quite worth the 13th round ADP that he seems to have been moving towards over the later part of draft season. Irv Smith, Dawson Knox, Taysom Hill, I don't want to have to worry about those guys and have to count on them whatsoever. So I feel like Okonkwo is the last really remaining viable tight end where he goes in drafts. So that's why I gravitate so much towards him generally.
I personally have punted at tight end quite a bit, so I have Okonkwo as a tight end 1 on plenty of my teams.
Oh, same.
Usually in those cases, I'm going with him and Juwan Johnson or Trey McBride in the last round. So like I said, I wish I had a Kelsey and Andrews on every team, but when the cost of doing so is I have to miss out on a top 12 running back or whatever, it's hard for me to do it. And then I'm definitely not in on chasing Hawkinson. I'm not in on Kittle unless he falls past ADP. If I don't get Pitts or like Goddard or somebody like that, I'm just saying to hell with it. I'm not going to take these round 9 and 10 tight ends. I'm not going to take the Dalton Schultzes of the world. It's like I'm just going to hope that athleticism and 6-7 touchdowns between in each case of Okonkwo and Juwan Johnson hopefully does enough at cost, while hopefully I nail my running back receiver picks enough in those earlier rounds to make up the difference.
Yeah, I think so as well. So yeah, tight end is tricky this year. I think like you're saying, once you get past those top 2, it's hard to really feel safe, even with guys like Hawkinson and Kittle. I ended up kind of getting stuck with Kittle in a salary cap draft the other night. I was just price enforcing. The tight end market seemed to be kind of soft in that room. So someone was about to get him for, I think, $15 out of a $200 budget. And I was like, that's too good of a buy. And I'm not even a Kittle guy. So I ended up bidding up to 17. And that's where it stayed. And so I ended up kind of having to reallocate some resources and kind of change my draft strategy on the fly. I did not intend to walk away with George Kittle or spend that much on tight end generally, but
I took my first Kittle share a few days ago, and it was because I don't know if it was the 8th, but it was at least the 7th that he fell to. It was something like 15 spots past ADP, so I was like, guess it's now or never.
Right, exactly. So that's an important friend to keep when it comes to those guys. Who is your most rostered player as far as exposure goes?
Well, again, this is not something I recommend for other people. This is me being completely irresponsible, but 59.1% Calvin Ridley. That's the highest one for me, and I don't regret it at all or anything. If something bad happens, whatever, I hate having to make picks, obviously based on factoring in the worst case scenarios or whatever. So for me, it was always just replaying the scenario of why is Calvin Ridley available, at the 3rd, 4th round turn, earlier in the offseason, especially, is when I piled up a lot of those Ridley picks, because now he's going about a round and a half earlier than he was even something like a month and a half ago. So I don't know how much lately I've taken. I've definitely kept doing it still, but it's not as easily done as a couple months ago when I would take Ridley, because I just can't be faced with that question by the draft of do you want to let someone else get Ridley this late? I was like, no, hell no, never. I don't care. I know he could get hurt or whatever. I guess he could start gambling again or something, but I can't bear the thought of letting one of these other guys in this draft, getting Calvin Ridley around the 4th round. I refuse to do it. So that's how you end up with almost 60% exposure rate to a pretty expensive player.
Yeah, that's you wrote the book on it. That's a thing of beauty. I have a lot of Ridley myself, not nearly at the 60%, but I'm right around 30%. Definitely one of my more high exposure wide receivers, definitely, and especially among like the players that go in the first 3-4 rounds. And I've found myself being okay with taking him. If I'm picking in the late 2nd round, and my other options are like Devontae Smith, T. Higgins, DK Metcalf, like I'm still just taking Ridley.
Yeah. And then he was going later than those guys at one point. So yeah, that was a bad test for my like impulse control, because I just every time I'd be taking him that he was there.
Yep, and I'm gonna keep doing it. The rest of my best ball drafts, I'm gonna continue to get that exposure, because I like Ridley. Totally sold on him for this year, and again with those other options, I'm less so inclined. Or you look at them and they're the number 2 receiver. Maybe it is a very good offense like the Eagles or the Bengals, but I want that number 1. I want the number 1 for Trevor Lawrence. I like getting Trevor Lawrence a few rounds later. So
yeah,
it all comes together nicely. Let's see. The rest of my top 5 is Marvin Mims at 34%, Mike Williams at 30.8%, Damian Harris at 26.9%, and Garrett Wilson at 26.9%. And this is for tournaments.
That's pretty high on Garrett Wilson, which I wish I had more of him. I only have I don't know, it's something smaller, like 8 to 10%, because generally you have to take him in the 1st round. But love to get him where he tends to go. So I like that pick quite a bit. The only way that I'm a little different from you here, aside from Wilson, I guess was taking probably Chubb and Jonathan Taylor, players like that, where I would have otherwise needed to take Wilson to get more than I did. Damian Harris is the only guy of that group that I haven't taken a bunch otherwise, because I like the player. I think he's clearly a better running back than James Cook. It's just the health thing I didn't know what to make of. And I guess I was taking Okonkwo where I would need to take Harris, something like that. So I don't have so much Harris. I'll try to look that up right now. Oh God, apparently I have not picked him. My only Harris share is Najee. So one time. So yeah, that's something that could be a little painful for me. If I guess it would be, what is it? Algier was probably there quite a bit. Algier and I don't know, I guess I might have taken like Deontay Foreman over Harris, something like that even might have happened. I don't particularly recall it, but just trying to remember who tends to go in that range. Harris could pretty easily lead the Bills in touchdowns from scrimmage this year. And to be clear, that would not be passing touchdowns. Josh Allen will, of course, lead them in all-around touchdowns. But touchdowns from scrimmage, if Diggs finishes the year with 8 receiving touchdowns, Harris could finish with 9 or 10 rushing touchdowns. And in best ball, especially, Rashad Penny, that's the other one. Yeah, Rashad Penny and Damian Harris are kind of like the same thing this year. Good luck guessing when they'll do anything on a weekly basis, starting them ahead of time. But in best ball, they get the ball to point B, and it's going to happen at some point.
Yeah, it takes care of itself. I will say that with Harris, and when we get to the players that we might have too much of, I think that he fits that bill for me. But I think at the same time, if we were doing this podcast, breaking down our portfolios like a month and a half ago, the percentage for Harris probably would have been in the 40s. So I've largely put a freeze because it just hasn't sounded like it's been the best training camp for him.
It's going okay. He missed like a couple weeks, but it's like they have to use him. James Cook, I'm sorry, cannot play that much. So if the Bills are scoring points, Harris is a good bet to get in on it. I mean, he had 15 on something like 205 carries with the Patriots a couple years ago. It suits him. It doesn't suit Cook. So I think he'll be fine. It's like he would have to kind of just get hurt basically to not be a decent return. But for what it's worth, my Mims share percentage is 22.7. Mike Williams 27.3. So I'm definitely high on those guys.
Love it. So I guess rounding it out with Harris, the theory is very simple. It's very in line with what you're kind of outlining. I view him as basically discount David Montgomery, where you have a running back who's starting that, should be, able to catch a lot of passes, things like that, but they can't really move the pile. And if it's an offense that's going to be scoring a lot of touchdowns, at least we expect, maybe the Lions regress a little bit this year. But I think frankly, I think the Bills might be in danger of regressing a little bit, but I still think that the offense is going to be good enough to where, if Harris is that primary goal line guy and Latavius Murray doesn't ruin my dreams, then I feel like Harris pays off at that ADP pretty easily.
Yeah, I guess I would say I'd be surprised if Harris caught anywhere near as many passes as Montgomery. I think Gibbs and Montgomery are both going to catch passes for the Lions, but Harris has a certain objective level of returns for as a rusher in particular, and that it's something the Bills need to be as competitive as they want to be. They're not going to get it from James Cook.
No, they're not, and we've been over that. The people know our official stance on one James Cook. Before we move on to players that we have faded, any other high exposure guys that you wanted to touch on?
Yeah, again, I have way too many high exposure players. So let's see. I have Khalil Shakir on 54.5% of teams somehow. And the how there is basically I'd get him in the last 2 rounds all the time, and I just don't care about most players that are still available at that point. I don't even know who it's like it'd have to be guys like Hunter Renfrow and maybe Rashid Shaheed and stuff like that. And my reasoning was kind of chasing upside, I guess, because as much as you're seeing these reports from Joe Buscaglia, who I know is a good reporter, the premier Bills reporter probably, has been saying like Trent Sherfield's been getting ahead of Shakir in camp. And that's one of those things. If the Bills try it, they'll quickly be given reason to stop it. And they risk losing games over it if they go that way, because Sherfield just can't do anything. I mean, I'm sorry, he's a special teams player. And Khalil Shakir, big volume producer at Boise State, ran the 4.43, totally decent rookie year, and he is capable of swing backup utility. So if either of Stephon Diggs or Gabe Davis misses time, it's Shakir that they need to step up, because Sherfield just point blank isn't going to give them anything. Like you can think he's doing something productive, Ken Dorsey. You will learn through the outcomes this year that you suppose wrong. And It's a long season. Prospects with Shakir's traits almost always work out. So especially since it's best ball 17-game season nowadays, I'm okay with it. I'm not. If my season goes badly, it probably won't be because of Shakir.
Yeah, I think so too. So I mean, again, with those later round guys, I think it's totally justifiable to have the higher exposure, because you're kind of dumpster diving a little bit at that stage, and you're trying to find something with plausible upside or something that to where you think maybe they get into my starting lineup a handful of times this season and go from there. We just got a question from our friend NBA Rigged asking what our exposure rates are on one Travis Etienne. Mine is not crazy high in tournaments. I'm going to zoom out and see if it's a little bit higher in with sit and goes added on, but it's only about 10% actually with Etienne. So I feel like I'm light on him, I guess, upon further analysis.
You were probably taking a lot more Najee Harris where you would otherwise need to take Etienne. So whereas I have only one share of Harris, Etienne is on 27.3% of my teams. So the only way I get Harris higher than that is to lessen the Etienne number, which I understand. I totally sympathize with the Harris case. It's not like I'm eager to fade the guy. It's just A, I believe in Etienne. B, I would feel like a fraud if I was hyping a player and didn't put my money where my mouth is. For what it's worth, I always do. I'm too stupid to do anything else. But I have full faith in Etienne. If it goes wrong, it's because he got hurt. Point blank. I'm sorry. Bigsby is a backup. That's what he's going to be.
Yeah, so I think now that we look a little bit further, ETN is going to be a guy that I'm going to prioritize the rest of draft season. And Drew, this is a sample for me. I'm north of 50 drafts, so that might seem like a lot to some, and to others it might seem like Wolf of Wall Street. You gotta pump up those numbers. Those are rookie numbers.
Sorry, which player is this?
Oh, we had a question from
Oh, how many
Drew.
teams do you have? Oh, okay, I
Yeah,
missed that one.
Drew
I
has
have
a
I have 22 in the Best Ball Mania and like 20 before the draft, something like that.
okay. So with roughly similar team volume.
Yeah, some people do like literally, max entry every single contest, and for what it's worth, I am well short of that kind of playing.
I simply do not have the Skrilla to run around like that. Drew, also big fan of your YouTube thumbnail picture, a Grateful Dead Ravens mashup.
Nice.
Talk to me in 2020. I would have been just going over which live show from the 70s, whether or not that one at Cornell actually happened, something like that. I think there's some deep lore there.
I don't know much about the Grateful Dead, but I saw that got a bunch of records.
They sure do, and I like their iconography. Let's go ahead and on that note, speaking of the Grateful Dead, no, and jam bands, just kidding. We got a message from our friends over at Fantrax. For you fantasy football players out there, is there something you wish your fantasy league had, or features that are missing from your current leagues? Bonus scoring, custom schedules, or playoffs? Deeper team settings? Well, look no further, because we have you covered with our friends at Fantrax. Fantrax is the most customizable fantasy platform in the industry, offering the greatest fantasy experience for your dynasty, keeper, redraft, and best ball leagues. Keep a note, yeah, they got best ball over there. Create or join a fantasy football commissioner league. Invite your friends and dominate your draft this season. Fantrax is the top dynasty fantasy football platform in the industry. Coming from another service, not a problem. Fantrax can easily import your leagues, your current leagues and rosters, and customize if needed. Ever have a trade go wrong or make a mistake in dropping a player? Fantrax commissioner tools allow you to undo any move with one simple click. If there's anything lacking in your current fantasy league manager, Fantrax likely has it. Fantrax is running a special promotion that you don't want to miss. Sign up for free at fantrax.com/rotowire today to enter for your chance to win tickets to any regular season NFL game for you and your entire league, plus $6,000 in spending cash. That's right, tickets for your entire league. Simply create a new league or bring over your existing leagues for more chances to win. Simply go to fantrax.com/rotowire and sign up today. Fantrax, the home of fantasy sports. Again, you can find all that promotional info at fantrax.com/rotowire. Also got a message from our friends over at Rival Fantasy. If you're looking for a place to play head-to-head fantasy football games without the huge tournaments, salary caps, or complicated game types, then Rival Fantasy is where you want to play this season. From a twist on a classic game with Fantasy Bingo, where players generate a lineup to complete achievements and get bingo, to head-to-head fantasy challenges where you'll pick which of two players will score more fantasy points. This is the best of fantasy sports. For the 2023 NFL season, Rival Fantasy is offering new users a $200 deposit match plus a $25 first play voucher. Rival Fantasy is so confident you'll love the experience. They're giving you money to play right out of the gate. Experience the future of fantasy sports on Rival Fantasy and become a rival today. All right, Mario. We just looked at the top of our list, guys that we have a ton of shares of in best ball. Let's go the other direction. Let's see who we find we are light on for this upcoming season. I'll start with two pretty primo receivers. They go in different rounds, but they both go inside the top 30 picks. I have all of one Stephon Diggs share, and I have no DK Metcalf.
Yeah, I wish I had more Diggs as well. I only have one share, which I must have just had an incredible run of avoiding the 7th, maybe 8th pick. Like I must have just never got those two picks, because in the second half of the first round, I'm pretty confident my most selected player is Nick Chubb. but even I would not have. I don't even know if I would have a single time taken Chubb over Diggs. Like Diggs to me is close to a top 5 player. So, and at the same time, I'm pretty sure I haven't taken Kelsey over Diggs a whole lot. Yeah, I've one share of Kelsey too, which I assume I took at 6 or 7, and presumably with Diggs already off the board. So I don't know what to do about that. I wish I had more. Maybe that's why I was taking so many Shakir and Deontay Hardy shares. Like on some level, I was just sensing latently sensing that I didn't have enough Diggs and was like chasing the next closest thing I could think of. I don't know, but Diggs is a top 6 player to me. I think he's just too cheap. And if it were more like an auction format, I'd probably have ended up with more because I definitely have him ranked well ahead of some of the receivers that he goes ahead of even. I feel like I've seen like St. Brown and some other players like maybe even CeeDee Lamb go ahead of Diggs a couple times. And every time that happens, I'm like, I wish, why am I not team 9? Why am I always somewhere else when this happens? Because I would have liked to have Diggs closer to, let's see. I don't know what the percentage would need to be because it's that it needs to be that very particular range of the first round again, basically 6 through 8. But I kind of wish I had Diggs closer to something like 10 or 12%. I don't know.
For whatever reason, I feel okay with being light on Diggs this year. I think having just one share is probably not ideal. But I just feel like the Bills might be teetering a little bit, might take a step back this year. The rest of the division, if it stays healthy, I think is going to be a much tougher test for them. That they got to play the first place schedule, So I just feel like something is amiss with Buffalo this year, and when it comes to drafting in the first round, like I'm more attuned to take Austin Eckler if he falls there, or AJ Brown even. And I would take Diggs over CeeDee Lamb or Amon-Ra St. Brown, especially in the half-point PPR type of format like Underdog has. I get the case for Diggs, but, for better or for worse, I'm going to be light on him this year.
I think if you feel that way about Diggs, you should definitely take the under on like the Bills' season win total because
I am.
If Diggs is anything less than 1,250, even 1,250, I think that you're talking some painful stretches for the Bills offense. They need him to be around something like 1,400 yards with plus efficiency, or else their whole blueprint falls apart, I think.
Exactly. It's very, very contingent on him performing and playing and everything because, the rest of the receivers are talented, but they can't carry an offense the way that Diggs can. So, things would definitely go sideways in that case. But I am leveraged on the Bills under for this year. It's 10.5, which makes me feel boogie,
that's
but
pretty low, don't you think?
It is. I was surprised to see it open that low and stay there. I would have figured that 11 or 11.5. Just like the Eagles, in the Chiefs. I'm surprised to see them down just a little bit, but I guess
I agree. Though I mean, I think Diggs is so good, and that's basically the reason that I'm still interested. But I don't like a number of the things that they've done from a team building perspective. I will give them this though: the more they play Deontay Hardy, the better, because the more they put Dalton Kincaid on the field instead, that makes the field very small for the defense. Like Diggs, you're putting a safety over the top of him every play anyway. And in doing so, you remove the one big play threat that they have on the field. I think Gabe Davis is a good big play threat, but it's like he needs so much time to get to the depths that they tend to use him at that it makes a kind of just a harrowing setup for Josh Allen. But Deontay Hardy in the slot instead of Kincaid, that second safety has to pay attention now to that rep in the slot. Whereas with Kincaid, they're only paying attention because they're like, I just got to keep him ahead of the chains and then we're good.
Yeah.
Whereas with Hardy, it's like you got to be real careful. So the more they play him, the better I think they'll go. But with Brandon Beane so invested in James Cook and Kincaid to make him look good, I bet he's going to lean on the coaches to put some of their lesser players on the field.
Could be.
And John, no Metcalf for me, none.
No, so that it's not that we hate the player. But in the third round, like again, I'm taking Ridley, or a lot of the times earlier this offseason, get to late third round. Maybe I started with two receivers, like I'm getting Ramondre Stevenson or Travis Etienne, something like that instead. So he just never really entered my draft plans. I just when I'm thinking about my early round picks, I wonder if their best season is behind them or is it coming up. And I feel like in Metcalf's case, I could be wrong here, but maybe he's already had his best season. I'm not sure that he can, outperform it with Geno Smith. And then you also have Lockett and eventually Jackson Smith and Jigba in the mix there. Maybe they run the ball a little bit more this year. So there's just enough there for me to just kind of be out on Metcalf in best ball this year.
Particularly on underdog where it's half point PPR. This is kind of a dead zone for receivers for me. Even Higgins, I'm not super psyched to take. Just that's more because of the incredibly inflated wide receiver market due to all the zero running back people that are out there now. It's just like a market reality that someone like Higgins goes in the top 27. But I kind of want to opt out of that range. Before I was taking Ridley when I was there. Now he's too high in the order to keep doing it. So I kind of opt out in that range. And it's not until DJ Moore and Mike Williams that I get interested again. At Keenan Allen, I would be in full point PPR, but he's like, what is like 15 points exactly every single week doing for me in half point PPR? Like that's not worth a top 3 pick in my opinion. And whereas Williams and Moore, they can get touchdowns, they can get big plays. So I've even with guys like Ramondre taking a hit with the Elliott signing, I tend to go back to running back when I end up in the order any later than Ridley at receiver. It's just like I just don't see any difference between the next 8 guys for the most part.
I do like taking Mark Andrews in the third.
Oh yeah, well. Andrews.
So I just have too many faves in that range, and Metcalf just you kicked out of the club. Just not
Andrews is a guy I wish I had more of because I assumed I just kind of what would you say? I just was kind of turned away by the price initially. I just kind of reflexively moved away from it because I didn't like the idea of having to spend a 3rd round pick on a tight end. But as much as I think Andrews' share of the targets in Baltimore is about to go down, maybe even a lot, so is the size of the pie is going to get so much bigger. Like I mentioned before, Lamar Jackson, as of a couple weeks ago, had an over-under of something like 34.90 for passing yards. If he plays 17 games, Lamar's getting to 4,300 this year pretty easily, I think. And Andrews could have like a 1,200 yard season. So that would hurt for me because I don't have any Andrews, and I if I draft any more teams, I'm probably going to go specifically for a little bit more of him.
Love me some Andrews, and I think what's nice, and it doesn't always work out this way, but if you're picking late 3rd round, you can get, and Andrews is still available. There's a pretty good chance that you can end up getting Lamar on the back end in the early part of round 4. The real question, of course, is he still there for you with like the 9th or 10th pick in the 3rd round? Mario, we do have some interesting questions in the chat that I wanted to bring up. NBA Rigged active today, asking about Cortland Sutton. Knowing what we know about Jerry Jeudy, obviously Tim Patrick and KJ Hamler as well. Do you feel like you should be drafting more Cortland Sutton right now? Are you happy with the exposure that you have, or as he astutely adds on to this question, would you just still go with Marvin Mims?
So I haven't done a draft since the prognosis for Jeudy came out, and I'm not aware of how high Mims might be going in the last couple of days. If Mims is going in the first 10 rounds or something, that's probably too much. It was always easy to make the call on Mims because before he was going like the 13th, 14th, 15th, whatever. So at those prices, it's kind of it's not worth fretting over so many of the details, but first 10 rounds or something, that's probably too much. I do have Sutton safely ranked ahead of Mims, although even I'm kind of surprised at how closely I've got them at this point. I have Sutton on a few teams, 13.6%. I am I'm not really moved in either direction by that. Like I'm not trying to get more. I'm getting bad vibes about the Broncos again. I think there's rot that goes quite a bit deeper than just Nathaniel Hackett and into the front office, even hell, maybe ownership. I don't know, but I'm getting really bad vibes from the Broncos, and I don't really want to pay a premium price for anybody on that team. So Mims being relatively cheap is kind of what made him preferable for me, and so we'll see what his price rises to. But if it gets too high, same rule will apply for me.
So yeah, I'm at a point where I'm good with not having any more Marvin Mims. He went in the 10th round in my most recent Best Ball Mania, which I believe I drafted Tuesday night.
That's pushing it, yeah.
Yeah, and so I did not end up with him on that team.
Man, that team looks like it's going to be bad. I know I keep saying like their roster just kind of doesn't look very good, and the defense is going to get a lot worse without Avira there.
Yeah, I think so as well. So I mean, it's just an ugly potential setup again. Okay, with Mims where he's been going in the 10th round, you can probably jump off the rocket ship at that
point. Love
the
players too. He's going to be really good.
I think so as well. And then Sutton goes early 8th round in that most recent one.
Not terribly interested in that. Even I still believe in Sutton. To be clear, I don't trust anything about the Broncos. And whereas earlier in the offseason, I kind of just assumed, oh, well, Sean Payton will make things quite a bit better. I'm starting to question that. I wonder if Sean Payton is coming in with a little bit too much presumption, a little too much, too high of an opinion of himself and not enough worry about whether he's doing enough. I think he might be in for a bit of a rude awakening.
It won't be quite like Joe Gibbs's return, but
he had success, or at least like wild card success when he what was like they were making like the wild card round with Brad Johnson or whatever the hell.
Todd Collins maybe, although I might be. I know they made the playoffs with Todd Collins.
Patrick Ramsey.
That guy could throw the ball.
Yeah, guy could explain this quarterback you. But I was trying to think of somebody that it reminded me of, and I'm the most often you'll see Peyton's return likened to coaches like Joe Gibbs and Bill Parcells, and I don't think he's going to have nearly as much success as either one, at least not this year. If they had more talents, I could see it more easily, but they're going in the wrong direction.
Yeah, he's taken over a roster that, I think it was oversold going into last year, where the whole narrative for years, basically since Peyton Manning retired, is it's a good roster. They're quarterback away, and they get Russ, and they are putrid.
And now they have neither thing.
Yeah, it's one of those. Yeah, like one of my absolute favorite stats from last season is like they would have had a winning record if they averaged even 20 points a game.
Oh, like they would have probably been the third or fourth best record in the AFC if they scored 20 points a game. They would have had a winning record with something like 18.1 points per game.
Yeah. So I was overdoing it at 20. It just would have taken 18. So just
something
get
like
those
that.
6 field goals, man. That's all you need. Another question, this one in regards to Baltimore's receivers. I think that this is an interesting one because all three of them go in what, like probably like a 3-round range, something like that. Zay Flowers has kind of safely pulled ahead of the pack. And by extension, I have the least amount of Zay Flowers among this 3, but I still have a pretty healthy amount. I'm at 13% for him. For Beckham, I'm at 19%. And with Bateman, I think by function of him being the cheapest all summer, I'm at 25% with Bateman.
I wish I had more Bateman. I only have 22.7, which by conventional reasoning is more than enough. But I just think Bateman's clearly the best one of the 3. So with Flowers going earliest of them, I really wanted to hammer that. I wanted to, in theory, get leverage on the field, because if people are paying 7th, 8th round for Flowers and Bateman's going in the 9th, sometimes he was going in the 10th before he returned to practice. I wish I had gotten close to 40% there. I really think there was a big opportunity there. Flowers is a good prospect, but I'm sorry, he's not as good as Bateman, and it's not close. I know it's entertaining highlights with Flowers, but their production profiles, but the production profiles between Rashad Bateman and Flowers are so clearly distinguished. I think it's only for the lack of visible reminder that Bateman has faded in people's what do you call it, like memory, basically, because if you look at his per snap numbers and if you look at his broader prospect profile, there's a reason why he was a first rounder, and I don't think as much that Flowers was. I mean, Flowers, they're going to regret taking over Addison. I don't have any qualms with saying so. With that said, Flowers, especially if Beckham gets hurt as often as he has tended to, if Bateman's foot flares up, Flowers will have to do a lot. I'm glad that I have zero exposure at his current price.
Let's see. I think I've gone full circle with Zay Flowers because he's someone that I've been interested in since his freshman season, like 2 games in at Boston College. It's like, how's this? This guy's doing like 20 yards a touch, and like everyone else in this. I mean, it was like akin to like the wide receiver version of Jahmyr Gibbs at Georgia Tech, where it's just like that. All of like the offense goes through this guy, and he's ridiculously efficient. So huge fan of his. And then, you get to the draft this year, the general skepticism that I think Ravens fans have with their ability to scout receivers, like you said, with the difference between him and Addison. I do think Addison the better prospect as well. But so
Flowers is probably more versatile. I mean, you can do more, what would you call it? Like, not gadget things, but more slot traffic kind of plays. I mean, Addison's totally comfortable playing in traffic, but he's not really built to keep pushing your luck in that part of the field, whereas at least Flowers is built more stout at 5'9", 182 or whatever. I just think he's a kind of a wide receiver 3 to me in the NFL because I don't think he can threaten with volume downfield, and I don't believe that is he was actually below the baseline for Boston College at a couple points in the past couple of years, and his target competition was always Hunter Long and like a guy who transferred to Bowling Green as a 5th-year player and was their 4th receiver there. So I hate when how in the tape there are so many plays that take forever to develop, where it's like 4-part processes to free him up specifically, which was a very good strategy by Boston College. He was their only option to produce, but it's just different than getting that usage in a more in structure organic way. So I think Flowers is going to be more entertaining than efficient, or certainly more entertaining than predictably productive, because if Beckham and Bateman are healthy, even as someone who is clearly low on Flowers compared to most people, I would say it's borderline unfair to expect him to outproduce players like that right off the bat, given their respective experience levels. Like I would not try to say, look how right I am about Flowers if he starts slow this year, because he should start slow. It would like require or not require injury to one of the other guys, but the most likely explanation, in my opinion, if Flowers starts fast, is that Bateman or Beckham missed snaps here or there.
Mm-hmm. I'm of the belief that yeah, he'll be probably the number 4 option in terms of targets in this offense, but I think what he can do after the catch, if you just get the ball in his hands, like it looks like he has legitimate ability at the NFL level with that. The quickness, the short area stuff, I think is really good. Might not have shown up quite as much at the combine to underscore that, but my eyes tell me that he's someone that is going to do some pretty electrifying stuff once he has the ball in his hands. But like you said, the volume might be frustratingly inconsistent for him. One more question here, and then we're going to move on to our next topic. KJ wants to know how we see Zeke doing this year in full PPR.
I think Elliott will play about 25 snaps a game, 20 snaps a game, and he's just going to be a true backup to Stevenson. Stevenson needs a breather. Whatever Stevenson gets nicked up, they'll give Elliott the ball quite a bit in that case, but there's nothing that Elliott does better than Stevenson at this point. Maybe blitz pickup. I don't have a good sense of how much Stevenson does blitz pickup. Obviously, Stevenson's good as a pass catcher. he has an advantage over Elliott by quite a bit there. So if Elliott's taking passing down snaps, I don't think he's doing it so much at the expense of Stevenson's usage. It's more like on passing plays where Elliott's in, the Patriots are trying maybe deeper drops, trying to find a play downfield, in which case Elliott can pick up the blitz and get that extra time. But if they're trying to make a route, if they're trying to put a route on the field that's a viable target opportunity, they have to go with Stevenson.
I think so as well. So I think Zeke, where he goes in best ball
really
drafts,
good handcuff.
Yeah. I think, there will be probably enough rushing touchdowns for Zeke for him to be somewhat of a worthwhile late round target, but like you're not like excited about like gathering a bunch of Zeke shares. I don't think.
I'm glad with the ones that I got because he was going around, I want to say something like the 15th or 16th round for a lot of the offseason. And even though I like a player like Jalen Warren as a handcuff, someone who can actually replace Najee Harris if the playing time opens up, I would much rather have Elliott as far as that category goes in the 15th than Warren in the 9th or 10th. So Elliott's a really good glue guy this year, especially if you got him at those earlier prices, in my opinion. But yeah, even that goal line stuff, I don't think he takes from Stevenson as much as he takes what's left after Stevenson.
I see. So Stevenson's still going to be the primary goal line guy, at least
unless
hopefully.
He keeps fumbling.
Yeah, got to cut that out. That does. Bill Belichick doesn't seem to like that too much. Before we get on over to our next topic, we got a message from our friends over at Fantasy Sports Knockout. Think you've got fantasy football figured out? Think again. Introducing Fantasy Sports Knockout, a new Survivor League that's worth the challenge. A season-long tournament where every week matters. Strategize, draft, survive. High effort with even higher stakes. Because who likes losing? Draft your lineup, use players you want, but be careful. You can only use each player once. The lowest scoring entry is eliminated each week. The concept is simple. Survival is not. Stop losing, start surviving in the only league where skills are tested and strategy pays off. Learn more at survive.fantasysportsknockout.com/RotoWire. Again, that's survive.fantasysportsknockout.com/RotoWire. Fantasy Sports Knockout is available for real money in certain states, but anyone can play in a user-created league. So if you think you know fantasy, prove it. Visit survive.fantasysportsknockout.com/RotoWire today. We also have a message from our friends over at Blue Wire. All right, let's get to the FOMO section of this particular episode, guys, that we wish that we had more shares of. Mario, would you care to lead us off? Who are you light on that you wish you had some more of?
Well, some of those guys that we talked about already, like Diggs and Andrews, but similar to the category of Diggs, I guess, Davante Adams. I only ended up with him on, it looks like, one of my teams. I got scared a little bit, of course, by the Jimmy Garoppolo foot thing. If it hadn't been for that, I probably would have been taking Davante Adams something like the top 8 all along. And yeah, in a way, I'm asking myself now, it's like, why didn't I? And I can't really come up with an answer that makes me feel better about it. It'll be easy hindsight, obviously, if Garoppolo's foot does become a problem. But if it doesn't, I'm probably just going to be wondering, like, why the hell didn't I take Davante Adams a bunch of those times? Like, what did I think was going to happen? He would get only 6 targets in a game. Like, even if it's like Brian Hoyer, I mean, 14 targets or whatever is going to do enough. So yeah, Davante Adams, along with Diggs, Mark Andrews, is definitely up there. I'm trying to think of another one who's not so cost prohibitive that I if I missed out on, I just kind of have no good excuse for it, kind of thing. And I'm having more trouble figuring out something like that, but yeah, I think it's pretty much just Diggs at receiver, or sorry, Diggs and Adams at receiver for the most, but maybe Garrett Wilson too. Like I had something like 16 or 20% Garrett Wilson before the NFL draft. I can't remember what he was going at back then. I I guess I have to assume he was going a little later than he does now. Maybe there was some ambiguity about Rodgers back then. I can't remember. But since then, I only have one share again. So I would like to have more than that. I only have 4.5% Wilson, Diggs, and Adams each, and I don't like any of that.
Those are all guys that could definitely pop this year. For me, some of those early round for one of these, more mid round for the other. I think I only have like one or two Joe Burrow teams, and
I'm personally okay with that one. I thought he was going a little high, and I know part of it's just that he goes that high because Ja'Marr Chase goes second or third in every single draft, and every single time the person who takes Chase wants to get Burrow as well. So you kind of just you have to go wherever that third round pick is going for that team in question. And waiting until the fourth, it's really easy to miss Burrow. But yeah, even before the calf thing, I mean, I have Herbert just point blank at or above Burrow. So when Herbert was going earlier this offseason, I want to say he was going almost like maybe a round and a half later than Burrow. They're a little closer now. But yeah, Burrow, I don't have a whole lot of. It's quite simply the case that I only have Burrow when I took Chase.
Yeah, if I don't have the correlated Chase or Higgins, and I don't have really much of Higgins at all this year.
Me neither.
So that I TBD on how I feel about that one.
I love Higgins, but if I got to take him in the top 27 picks, and especially now, and I don't know what kind of shape Burrow is going to be in for week 1, it's a high price to pay to find out.
I think so too, and again, like the quarterbacks that go in Burrow's range or a little bit after, like Herbert or Trevor Lawrence, like I'm just more inclined to take one of those guys and take, I don't know, someone like a Mike Williams in the 4th round when possible. So I just end up being light on Burrow. Some other guys that I'm surprisingly light on Jahan Dotson. I felt like I would have had more in my early best ball exposures. It's closer to 20, but I only have 8% now. So I think he's another guy that I'm going to try to prioritize here over these next few days as best ball season wraps up.
Yeah, I probably would have had more Dotson if I knew Ron Rivera was going to destroy Terry McLaurin's toe so he could impress the new ownership group with a preseason victory. But I had been almost, what was it that I have McLaurin at? Nothing prohibitive, but if I thought McLaurin's going into week 1 with a turf toe, I would have been like, oh, I gotta get some Jahan Dotson because I definitely like the player quite a bit.
Yeah, I think Dotson, a definite year 2 breakout candidate. I think you could also argue that what he did as a rookie was totally underrated relative to some of the other rookies in his class. I think Olave and Wilson had better years and we're great, and they are better fantasy assets for this year and everything, but I feel like Dotson on a per play basis was really darn good, and I don't feel like it gets quite recognized enough. So I feel like he's a favorite of my receivers that I take in that part of the draft, that 8th, 9th round area. And I guess more often than not, I've ended up, I guess maybe taking more Quentin Johnston over the course of this off season than Dotson.
That doesn't sound quite like you to me.
Then I don't know who my guy is then.
But yeah, I think I would definitely prefer Dotson over Johnston. And even though I like Johnston, he doesn't profile as a rapid target hog, especially in that underneath and intermediate, whereas Dotson, not exactly built as a traditional downfield threat, not a jump ball build traditionally, but he can threaten at all depths of the field.
Yeah, no, he absolutely can, and as we all know, Sam Howell's gonna crush this year. So
that's my I have him tied for first with Howell. I do at 27.3%.
That's what I'm talking about. Right on.
I'd like to think all of those were in the later part, but I have to be honest. I took him in like the 15th a couple times too.
No shame in that game. So Sam Howell, I have 24%. I have Stroud at 21, Lamar at 20, Trevor at 17, and Kirk Cousins at 15.
I have more Cousins than I planned to ahead of time. Some of it was influenced by the amount of Jordan Addison that I have, which I have quite a bit. Yeah, I have Addison on 36.4% of my teams. So I have Cousins as something like my fourth quarterback behind Howell, Deshaun Watson, Trevor, and then I have Cousins after those four. So he's number 5.
Okay, I feel better about that, my Cousins shares in that case. Some other top 10 round type of guys, top 5 in this particular case. I don't have enough DJ Moore, and I feel queasy about that. And I don't have a lot of Aaron Jones, and I'm not sure how I feel about that.
Yeah, I wish I had more of both of those guys. Jones, man, I've gone into so many drafts targeting him in that 5th round because it's one of those cases where I feel like I see him falling every time I'm not in a position to take him, and then every time where I'm trying to line it up, someone takes him right before I can. So Jones is someone that I really like and have always liked. I think he's clearly a uniquely good runner. So maybe I'll have to if I could just have like my share percentage go down for one player and then put all of that toward another player in the same range, I'd probably try to lessen some player that I've been picking in that 5th round range and turn it into Jones, but I just haven't been able to get the exact draft order in my own team slotting to line up perfectly, which is irritating.
No, absolutely. Because Jones is a good player. We know that. Maybe they run the ball a little bit more. I think all told, I'd probably take Dameon Pierce over him, maybe. But among those other guys that go in that range, I mean, I think Jones is totally fine. I guess I've just found myself either waiting on running back there or taking Dameon Pierce.
The basic issue for me is that I have Jones projected only a little bit behind Travis Etienne, and I would like my share distribution to be more reflective of that than my like pick order circumstances, because I got 27.3 of Etienne and I've only been able to get one share of Jones, even though I've made more of a conscious effort to get Jones specifically. Like, I'd rather have Jones than Ken Walker, for instance. And
Sure.
It's like, even though I feel that way, I'm somehow never able to get it to work out. Just really frustrating. But yeah, DJ Moore too. I think I don't really believe in stacking with Justin Fields. I'm always less interested in stacking running quarterbacks in general. But DJ Moore, I mean, it's almost like this Bears offense could be a really good, a much better version of the kind of thing that the Maryland offense was in DJ Moore's
I was wondering if you're going to go there. Yes,
because they're gonna throw it 25 times, and 9 of those times it's gonna go to Moore.
Yeah, I mean the target share is going to be crazy. I think it'll be among the league leaders in terms of overall targets. Probably still at best
Probably like
finishing,
20, but then he's gonna be like 12 receiver because his efficiency is always really high.
So we had a question in the chat earlier, I think from our guy Uncle Ted, about the chances that DJ Moore ends as a top 15 receiver this year. I feel like there's a pretty good shot at that.
Yeah, let me try to race through the wide receiver ADP here real quick. So he's going about 20. It looks like that would not be a difficult jump. And all it would really take, even if Moore doesn't play much better than expectation, even if he's kind of like the median outcome, all it takes is someone like Debo missing a couple games, and then like 3 of the players in the top 15 receiver ADP having slightly worse returns than people are projecting. But I happen to think Moore could do something like 10 yards a target this year. It's probably going to be like a 58-62% catch rate kind of thing. I'm not expecting big PPR numbers, especially perhaps, but I really like Moore in half point, best ball, not best ball. That doesn't matter. You're always starting Moore. regardless of the format. But in half point PPR, I think he gains a little bit just because I think he's going to be such a big play guy. And I wouldn't be surprised if he has a high touchdown count for his catch count.
Yeah, a good touchdown rate. So yeah, I'm with you on DJ Moore. Let's see. I saw because Maryland's playing Towson to start their season this weekend, and the Big Ten Twitter account tweeted out the last time that Maryland played Towson. I guess it must have been DJ Moore's last year in College Park, and he's just eviscerating those poor Tigers. It was something.
Even with a linebacker throwing him passes, that's not fair.
We've been there. Boy, Maryland has had very
storied university. Yeah.
They turn out some guys, but for the most part, it's rough. But Stephon Diggs, DJ Moore, and soon Raheem Jarrett will have his day in the sun. I spent a last round best ball pick on him the other day.
He could be their third receiver, and the top two get hurt a lot. So,
and I think he's better than Trey Palmer, straight up. So
probably,
but we're getting well into.
We've gone well past FOMO and gone into just kind of mental illness.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see. Anyone else that you wish you had some more shares of?
I'm trying to. It's a little hard to find it because it's like I'm looking through the haystack without knowing what I'm looking for. The list of names is already the list that I picked. So I can't remember who I didn't. But how about this? I'll say one case where it's anti-FOMO. I'm not trying to give like a hot take exactly. To me, it's a very lukewarm take. But sometimes I end up in this position anyway. Tony Pollard, I have, let me see, none of. And I'm perfectly okay with that. I'm seeing, even from people who are very smart, I'm seeing a push lately for Pollard to be like a top 12, top 15 pick. And I understand why that's happening insofar as I can see the process that's making that conclusion. I seriously question the premises of that process, however. Specifically, people are kind of looking at Tony Pollard and going simply, what if he had this many more carries and this many more catches and this many more snaps? What if it just simply happened? And the reason things like that don't simply happen is because it's pending satisfying certain physical realities. You have to be able to take the workload. Namely, you have to be able to actually play through that many snaps and touches. It takes at the very least a leap of faith. Supposing something pretty unprecedented, in my opinion, that Tony Pollard, despite never having taken halfback dives in the NFL, despite only really playing running back for the last 3 years and playing receiver before that, and still even now having the same build that he did when he played receiver at Memphis. He's going to be good this year, but the ways that Pollard will be limited, I think, will look a lot like the ways that Travis Etienne and Aaron Jones are limited. Like, none of these guys are going over 20 carries a game. They're going to have to get by with big efficiency. And I think it's pretty objectively clear that Etienne and Aaron Jones are more efficient than Tony Pollard. And that's with those guys getting carries other than just halfback tosses and sweeps and stuff like that. Like, there were plays that Ezekiel Elliott would take that necessarily lowered the yards per carry count because he's going into these carry types that expect to get less yardage than the carries that they would allocate specifically for Pollard. So I think people are overcounting two things: the projected workload with Pollard, and I think they suppose an efficiency rate that will actually almost necessarily decline, if only because even in their own scenario, even in their own projection of this workload, he would have to be taking on those carries that Elliott once did that drive down the yards per carry. So I think you got people projecting like, almost like 280 carries at 5.2 yards per carry for Pollard. I can understand why you would rank him in the first round if you're projecting that. I just think that that's not a very good projection. I think you should expect something more like 14 carries a game, 3 and 4 catches. And if they go over that, and especially if they give him those carries that are halfback dives, you might not like what you find.
So is there a backup Cowboys running back that you do like?
Not really, because I kind of like all of them. It's just that it's just begging for a committee. Rico Dowdle seems like the next one on the depth chart, but he can't catch passes, and he's a fumbler, and he's gotten hurt a ton throughout his career. He can run a little bit. I mean to emphasize a little bit. Dowdle has limitations as a pass catcher, but that's not to say he can take 20 carries. He can't. He can only give you like 10, 12 carries and maybe some blitz pickup. I don't know. But Deuce Vaughn, he's pretty clearly a problem with the football. I don't know how you keep that guy on the bench when he keeps doing the things that he tends to. Just the same, I think Hunter Luepke looks quite good. So I don't know how you keep Luepke and Vaughn off the field in the event that Pollard isn't playing. I almost wonder if you can keep them off the field even if he is.
So yeah, I guess the narrative that Tony Pollard is going to take like Zeke workhorse levels of volume, but maintain the crazy efficiency might be a little bit misguided.
People will point to like McCaffrey as an exception to the weight rule. And yes, McCaffrey is rather light to get the workloads that he has. But you'll notice at Stanford, he took like 35 touches a game. You know, he showed that he can pitch that many innings. With Pollard, we're just supposing he's going to go from 80 to 210. It's like, good luck. Maybe. I doubt it, though.
Yeah, the low probability there. Let's round it out with some players that, you know, maybe there's a little bit of buyer's remorse, a little bit of players that we wish we had fewer shares of. And for me, like we talked about at the start of the show, I think Damian Harris at over a quarter of my teams. I don't feel great about that. I wish it was maybe more in the mid-teens. Maybe it will work out. We kind of discussed how it could, but the more time that passes, the less I feel confident in that.
Yeah, I'm trying to look through. I would not worry about your Harris exposure. First of all, although I can understand, you know, it's easy to worry about almost anything, but as far as things worth worrying about go, I would put that one pretty low on the list. Like I was talking about before, I do wish I had less Khalil Shakir, even though I'm more or less okay with it. But 54.5% is what happens when you literally don't keep track of how many players you're picking ever. And I just didn't realize how many times I was taking him in the 16th, 17th, 18th. As much as I don't have, you know, a per se regret about that, I do wish I had split it a little more evenly between him and Deontay Hardy, who I also was taking quite a bit. And indeed, I would take the two of them on the same team a lot. But Hardy, I only have at 18.2%. I wish I could have had maybe, you know, Shakir at 35 and Hardy at 35, something more like that. So hopefully that's the biggest problem that I have this year. It would not be much of a problem at all, but I do regret that. I'm trying to remember what else. Let's see. I don't really see anyone else that makes me wince when I look at the exposure rates. Maybe I've
got two right here. If you want to hold that thought.
Yeah.
Two at 20% that I am wondering what I was thinking a little bit. Well, I know exactly what I was thinking with Jameson Williams, but in hindsight, 20%, Jameson Williams feels not great, and Alec Pierce at also 20%.
Do you know what round you were taking Jameson Williams in?
It would have been like way pre-discount era. Like I'm talking probably like when he was going the 8th, 9th round.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm biased on this question because I just kind of reject the panic around his abilities. I think it's one thing for a player to not have ability, and it's another for people to be disappointed that a player isn't meeting an unfair expectation. And in this case, the unfair expectation is, you know, why isn't Jameson Williams catching 4-yard slants from the slot? Why doesn't he take helmet to helmet hits and hold on to the ball? That's not how you should be using Jameson Williams. Jameson Williams should be out on the perimeter and downfield and toward the sideline, maybe down the seam. If you're putting him in the slot, it's got to be down the seam. You got to keep that, keep him closer to the safeties and away from the linebackers and all that. So it seems to me, again, probably being a little biased, but it seems to me like the criticisms of Williams are more in the line of we wish he was something that we never had good reason to suppose he would ever be. And that's not the same to me as disproving that he can't be what there always was good reason to believe. So my concern there is more related to Goff, I guess. And that's why I was a little lukewarm on Williams, even though I'm high on him as a player, is just because I have reason to believe Williams can threaten at a unique level down the field. But what does that really amount to if Goff's one of the worst at throwing to those areas of the field? And he is, and Goff is still bad. So yeah, that's more my concern with Jameson Williams. But granted, yeah, it's not looking as good for him as it did, a month and a half ago.
I'm starting to worry whether he will ever put it together. Maybe he will, because I definitely, think that he was worthy of a first round pick coming out of college. I thought what he did at Alabama was, as a Georgia guy, terrifying. The type of deep speed that he displayed, it was like watching Jalen Waddle all over again. So his only catch last year being the deep touchdown, is like, yes, that's what he can do, but you can't count on that every single week. And like you said, he's not really the type of guy that you want to just be sending into the teeth of the defense. You already have Amon-Ra St. Brown to be doing that, and Sam Laporta to be doing that.
Like, so, why isn't Jameson Williams St. Brown? Why isn't he simply St. Brown? We like that. I love Dan Campbell, but some of the things that he seems to expect of players seems a little disconnected to me from what he ever had good reason to expect.
Yeah, so we'll see if it works out. Again, I'm probably not going to get any more shares, so that this percentage will come down. And if I end up with what amounts to being 15% Jameson Williams by the time that we hit kickoff, I'll be fine with it, because the upside is still there. And if he can hit the ground running once he gets back from his 6-game suspension, it could be something that really gives you that rocket booster during the fantasy playoffs, especially with Lions being a dome team, all that good stuff. So that it could help.
I have a couple picks that I can submit now, John. Yes. I have Russell Wilson on 20% of teams. So granted, that was always kind of cheap, and usually when I took him, it was because there was a run on quarterbacks and I needed to pick some backup, and maybe for some reason maybe I had Sutton a couple times, maybe I had Mims a couple times, maybe something like that made me lean that way. But generally, I only took Wilson because of bye week considerations as a quarterback too, and even with that, I'm still kind of nauseous. I guess I wish I had 0. So there's that, and crap, how did I lose this screen already? I had a second one. Rashee Rice. Again, not terribly concerned about this, but I have him on 36% of my teams. Usually that was going in the 13th round, I want to say. So it shouldn't, in theory, be like a catastrophic dud if he is one. But to open the year, it seems like the Chiefs are pretty hell-bent on making Tony, Sky Moore, Marquez Valdes-Scantling the top 3. I happen to believe they're asking for trouble the more they give Tony snaps. Even Valdes-Scantling, I mean, you're only going to get so many targets per snap out of him. And if you as an offense have to put a target projection on Kadarius Toney to make the math work, a target rate more in line with what the average starting receiver in the NFL is, that's kind of begging for discord, I think. And I think in the event of that discord, Rashee Rice is pretty clearly who they go to next. So I'm not too worried about it. But Justin Ross, I am not really like buying the hype so much with Justin Ross, but clearly he's at least healthier than he was last year. And it seems, the longer he sticks with it, the more we can attribute his absence his rookie year, and even his kind of weak ending at Clemson, we can attribute it to injury. And if we can attribute all of that to injury, we might even have reason to believe that Ross is running and jumping better than he did at the pro day where he wasn't very good. So if Ross is getting anywhere near to what he was as a prospect before the injury, then that would probably be in conflict with Rashee Rice's projection, because Moore is going to be more so in the slot. Even if they have him playing 3 downs, he's going to get the slot reps that are there. And it's like Valdes-Scantling, even though he can't give you many targets, he is an important structural piece for how they space the offense, how they try to make the defense space itself. So there's only that Tony avenue, and if Rashee Rice has to split it with Ross, then it's like even in the event that Tony falls apart, then the theory that I had in mind for Rice wouldn't apply quite as much as I thought it would when I took him.
Yeah, I kind of, when he got drafted, it felt like he had a pretty decent path to having, if not a starting role, then like at least a relevant enough role on the boundary, catching passes from Patrick Mahomes. It seemed to make sense where he was going. I have 12%. I don't know if
I wish I had more like that. I think 12 is a good number, but I want to be clear. I think Rice is really good, and I think there's a totally good chance that he has a strong rookie year.
Well, we got X percentage of shares that are agreeing with you. One more question from the chat before we head out, Mario. Goff or Wilson this year? Russell Wilson.
Oh man. Oh God. I guess Wilson
might be neither.
I guess Wilson, but yeah, at this point, I don't know how I'm going to convince myself that I prefer Wilson over even someone like Derek Carr or Sam Howell. So I guess rather than take either of those guys, I would prefer to test my luck by waiting. And if I wait until something like the 16th to get Howell, then that works well for me. And if Howell goes earlier, then I'm comfortable taking him. Honestly, I've fallen into the habit of taking Mac Jones in the last round because I don't have Goff projected better than Jones. And so if Goff is going in like the 11th round and Mac Jones goes in the 18th, I'd take Jones every time. But Carr, I would probably have to move ahead of Wilson at this point. And before I was taking Wilson, sort of like, oh, well, Sean Payton will sort of just that and a little bit of running will make Wilson okay. And I'm starting to lose faith in even that much.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. Yeah, getting some of those vibes like you were saying when it comes to the Broncos. So yeah, I think restructuring that tier where you have Goff and Wilson, maybe the better option is someone
even
a little bit later. Like
I think I like Pickett more than those morons. Oh man,
I was wondering if I should even say that. I wasn't sure if I was going to get dunked on really hard.
It's a horrible thing to say, but it needs to be said.
Look, man, I went to the Falcons-Steelers preseason game last week. The Steelers.
Well, it's going to be ugly, but he runs a little bit, and if you're chucking it at Pickens enough times, and Freiermuth, it's like eventually the numbers will start adding, even if it's kind of an ugly spectacle. So all those quarterbacks are going to be ugly is the thing. Even Howell, I think, might be a little ugly, but we definitely know Goff, Wilson, and what's his name are going to be ugly.
Yeah, that is beyond a shadow of a doubt at this point. That's going to round things out for us here on the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. Again, breaking down our best ball portfolios. Got a week or so to go, folks. So get those best ball drafts in. Any FOMO chasing you need to do, go get after it. Any guys that you need to get those share percentages down, do it to it. And we will catch you next week previewing week 1. Thanks for listening.
Try RotoWire today, free for 10 days. Get our premium tools, rankings, analysis, and breaking news alerts. No credit card required. Go to rotowire.com/